And greetings and welcome, my friends, to the next episode here of the Red Delta Project podcast and live feed Q&A. I'm your host, as always, Matt Schifferly, with another video to help you be fit and live free. And today's episode is kind of a bit of a response episode to a lot of the stuff that I'm seeing popping up on the social feeds, particularly on YouTube, talking about the possibility of new, exciting muscle building drugs coming down the pipeline. We've already got weight loss drugs that have been making some significant waves in how we approach the the idea of losing weight and managing body fat levels. Are muscle building drugs next? And according to some folks like Dr. Mike Disertel, it seems like it's inevitable. However, after watching particularly some of his videos on these things coming out, and I highly recommend checking out his latest series on his podcast, talking about the aesthetic revolution, basically using fitness for the sake of aestheticness and aesthetics and looking better and more attractive, which is, of course, what my upcoming book, Beautiful Strength, is all about, which, by the way, has a release date now, July 4th, the 4th of July. Beautiful Strength will be officially released. I'll keep you up to date on ways that you can either pre-order it or check it out for bonuses on the RDP website. But anyway, he's talked about these potential drugs that could, in fact, in his ideas, replacing steroids, thinking that these things can be just as revolutionary for helping us to build muscle, particularly in those who struggle with building muscle due to genetic dispositions, have any kind of muscle wasting diseases, maintaining muscle mass in folks as they are getting older, which can be a very good thing because so many health influences come from strength and muscle mass, especially as they get older. That's why, in so many ways, strength training is, if there ever was one, the quintessential fountain of youth. You could take many different aspects of detrimental effects that we have when we age, and we basically either slow these things down or even sometimes outright reverse it through basic strength training. I even have a client that I've been working with for the past year or so, and he came to me from his last doctor visit, kind of like a checkup a couple of weeks ago, and he's like, all my markers are like going down that need to go down, and everything that should be going up is going up. And it's like, all I've been doing is strength training. It's like, yeah, that's the kind of thing that strength training does. And these drugs potentially could do very similar things. But is it hype? Is it false hope? Or is there something to it? Well, first off, I want to preface this with saying that the many of the experts, like particularly Dr. Mike, know a hell of a lot more about this stuff than I do. And my experience is much more limited than theirs. So maybe they know a little bit of something that I don't at this point. However, the way that I understand how some of these drugs potentially work is nothing new. When I was kind of listening to a bunch of the podcasts about it, and I was like, okay, this sounds kind of neat. And they're like, oh, yeah. So the way it works is it doesn't necessarily directly stimulate muscle growth, much like a steroid or anabolic steroid, which basically is an androgen amplifier. It amplifies everything about your masculine traits, if you will, muscle growth being one of it, but also everything else, which is why you get those nasty side effects. Well, these don't necessarily tell your body to build muscle directly, but instead influence the anti-muscle building influences in your body. Because every minute of every day, we are constantly sending signals through our body to be anabolic and to build up muscle and strength. Even through our daily activity, we're telling our body build muscle to some degree. We're just amplifying that when we do strength training and maybe eat a little bit more. But there's also influences that are working against you, particularly something called myostatin, and mTOR also plays a role in that. So they're looking at these suppressant influences and saying, what if we did things that can inhibit these suppressing things? So that way the signals telling you to build muscle aren't riding with the proverbial brakes on. And this is not new. I remember learning about this sort of thing back in college in my sports education, and sports nutrition classes and stuff, we all remember this picture of the jacked bodybuilder looking cow, where they're like, look, they gave this cow myostatin blockers, and now he looks like he's been, lifting for 5 years or something. It's huge muscular cow, right? And myself and every guy in the class at the time was like, oh wow, this is going to be great, this is amazing, this is the next revolution. But that was damn near 30 years ago. Like, if that stuff was great, why isn't it worked? And the answer is that by and large, things like myostatin blockers do work on a more reliable level in animals. But when it comes to human trials, the results are kind of hit and miss at best. They're much more unreliable. Now, maybe they figured something out with these new drugs coming down the pipeline. Maybe they've got some new AI or genetic sequencing or something going on that makes it work better. But the bottom line is that the way that these drugs supposedly work is not a new revolutionary process. We've long known about this sort of thing. We've all been trying to crack this code. Hasn't really happened yet. You can even go online now and just Google and look for myostatin blockers, and you'll find, shady supplement companies like, oh, our, proprietary amino acid blend with these special herbs, myostatin blockers, and stuff like that will help you build muscle. And I'm not saying that it can't work or doesn't work. I'm just saying it doesn't work reliably up to now. They haven't been able to figure out a way to make it work on a consistent basis. And so that's why I'm reserving a little bit of doubt when it comes to these potential muscle building drugs coming down the pipeline. Is that okay? I've heard this before. This is not new. This is not a new type of process you guys are trying to sell me on. And it's going to have to be a little bit different from what we had before. And that's the state of it right now, is like, don't get your hopes too high up, because we've been playing this game for quite a while and we haven't really been able to make it work all that great yet. And one of the best ways you can always tell if something is really actually that legitimate, if it really works, is just simply how popular it is. You would have myostatin blockers being sold in every gym in America, and everyone who wanted to build muscle would practically be on it. It's kind of like if you look at protein shakes or creatine, right? These things have a proven track record of potentially being helpful and safe, aside from just consuming so much protein shakes that you just get a bellyache or something. So that's why it's always everywhere. It's very, very popular because this stuff is relatively reliable. It's got a proven track record. The reason why we don't have, myostatin blockers all over the place in every drugstore is largely because it's just not panning out. It hasn't panned out to this point, even into a large degree in animals. Like, I saw that picture back in nutrition class. It's like, oh my gosh, that cow has like far more muscle on it than usual. And then I thought, well, why isn't that the standard way of, treating livestock now? I don't know any farmer out there who would like to double their beef yield and make much more money from every single animal that they have on their lot. It's like, so why isn't it happening? And the reason is because it's either not as effective or it's got some more consequences, which that's the other thing is, when we hear about these things, it's like, okay, it's going to be consequence free, the no side effects kind of thing. It's like, no, you can't hack Mother Nature and win. When we look at the fundamental processes that are governing how our body works, what you're doing is you're trying to inhibit some of the things that are trying to slow down or limit the amount of muscle growth that we can have. And that sounds great, but mankind has yet to ever intervene with some sort of safety valve with Mother Nature and not had some sort of negative consequences about it. Very rarely do we find something that's been in place from evolution and it's like, oh, that doesn't matter, we don't need that. It's like, yeah, chances are it's been with us or evolved within our body, or our body works this way for a damn good reason. And to mess with that usually means we're going to mess with something on a fundamental level. And to say there's no side effects to that is, I think, a little bit looking through rose-colored glasses. So when you're looking at these sorts of things coming down the pipe, can it potentially be good? Yeah. Can it potentially be great? In fact, absolutely. But is it going to possibly be the revolution and the consequence or side effect free utopia solution that Some people are saying, I reserve judgment on that one. I'll believe that when I see it. I've been in this game for over 30 years now. Every time people get really excited and hyped up about something new that can be potentially coming our way, it's usually way overblown, and the effects are not nearly to the degree that it really pans out to be. And the side effects are usually much bigger. And it doesn't mean it's not with its merit, but it usually does mean that no, it's not going to be as amazing as we thought it was. But the real reason why I'm making today's episode is that you don't necessarily need to wait for the trials to finish and the human trials, and then for it to be on test markets, and then for it to go on market at exorbitant prices, and then wait for the prices to come down low enough so you can actually get your hands on these things and actually get the benefits. You can start getting these types of benefits right now. And I'm going to be discussing how to do that in the remainder of today's episode. Let's get to some questions here and stuff like that. Dave 9503, Matt, best compound exercises to target the calves. Anything to do with the legs, my friend. So the key here is make sure that, make sure that you are engaging the calves to a very high degree with every leg exercise you do. Literally every, like, I don't care if you're doing leg extensions on a machine, still use your calves. Because the way that we can get a much bigger stimulus into a muscle is not to use the muscle in a particular exercise, but to use the muscle more and more effectively all the time. And that's how I got my calves. I have apparently, noteworthy calves. I was at the auto dealership the other day getting my car worked on, and there was a guy who literally like walked across the entire repair bay in the dealership, and he's like, "Dude, I gotta ask you, what do you do for your calves?" kind of thing. And I like my calf raises. I got a special calf block that I bought on Amazon and stuff. But the real answer is I use my calves really well walking, climbing stairs, riding my bike, doing squats, doing lunges, doing sissy squats, doing hamstring curls, doing bridges. I'm using my calves a lot all the time. And that's the key is how well can you engage your calves, which I'm going to get into why that's a big game changer in a minute. But more importantly, using it better all the time. Because you can do calf raises till the cows come home. If your muscle activation is poor, nothing you do will ever work very well. And if you're not using your calves very much in other exercises, the amount of volume you're subjecting your calves to is going to be minuscule compared to if you're using your calves a lot better all the time. Sometimes you'll hear people talking about clenching their toes into the floor when they're doing exercises like deadlifts, squats, lunges, kettlebell swings, that sort of idea. It's not so much about clenching your toes or even pressing the ball of your foot into the floor, it's engaging your calves. So the easiest test for this is, can you just voluntarily contract your calves fairly hard standing still? Most people can't. Most people can't. And that's the thing with tension control is you don't know it's bad until you actually improve it. Because tension control is like breathing, it's like how we talk, it's like body language. It's something that we largely do on subconscious autopilot. So if it's bad, we never learn it's bad. We don't know it's bad because it always feels fine. When we have poor tension control, our body feels fine. It feels like it's operating the way it always has. There's nothing to really address. But if you go through the steps to improve that tension control, again, I'll explain that in a little bit, then all of a sudden you're like, oh, wow, that's what my muscles are supposed to feel like during this. Oh, that is not at all what I was experiencing for the past 40 years of my life or whatever. Like, whoa, holy, that is way different. And then you got guys like me with good calves or bigger lats or whatever, and you're like, that's how squats feel for you. That's it, because we all think it's the same for everybody, and it totally is not. It's not even close to the same. Some people are doing squats and their calves are going nuts. Other people do squats and their calves are like falling asleep. So being able to improve that tension control is paramount, and then using the calves better all the time. Hell, I don't care if you're doing pull-ups, use your calves. The better you use your calves for all compound lower body exercises, the more you will be able to strengthen and develop them. Smooth operator. I'm drinking creatine mixed in my coffee right now. I've never tried it in coffee or something. I don't see a reason why that couldn't work. I mean, it's pretty flavorless stuff. So might not be a bad idea. Creatine in coffee. What? Ben saying, hey Matt, do you think there will be side effects to Ozempic that we already don't know about? No way to really know for sure. Here's the thing though, is a lot of times when we've got a new drug or we've got new things, people get this sort of rhetoric around things like, I can't talk today. Vaccines or even vitamin B shots, right? We used to have a company that would go through one of the gyms I worked at, and they would give us vitamin B shots if we wanted, and as a trainer there, I could get them for free. And I'd be like, yeah, sure, give me a vitamin B shot. And people are like, how do we know what the long-term effects are of this kind of thing? And it's always a bit of a fear-mongering idea. Sometimes rightfully thought, like, we don't know the long-term effects, but the fact is we usually actually do. It's because we have a pretty good understanding of how the body works and what a vitamin does or what a drug does or what this intervention does. So we look at the process and we can look at a process and be like, well, what's happening in the short term? And then long-term effects are that amplified. And so if I'm using a machine and I notice after a week, I get a tiny little bit of wear and tear on a piece of the machine part, and I'm like, okay, there's a little bit of wear and tear here, very, very tiny. So chances are 5 years from now, that part's going to break and we're going to need to fix it. And we're going to need to replace that part. I know I need to replace the tires and the brakes and the shocks in my car because we know of the wear and tear on it in the short term. So we know long-term effects largely correlated from short-term effects. So when we're doing the tests and we're doing things that test things like Ozempic and stuff, it's like, okay, what is the body doing in the short term? And then we can extrapolate and say, okay, so if it's doing that in a week, it's doing that in a month, and it's doing it in a year, we just simply extrapolate that out and say, okay, so what do we think, where do we think this is going in 5 years? If we've got something headed in a certain direction in a certain amount of time, we can say, well, it's probably going to end up over here in 10 years' time. So we already do have a general idea of where things are going, which is why we can have some degree of confidence that it's relatively safe. Is there always the chance that something could prop up? Of course, there always is. Nothing's ever 100% risk-free. There's always going to be the chance. However, the more we understand and the more we can reliably tell what the short-term effects are, the more we know what the long-term effects are. And so when we look at the short-term effects of Ozempic and things like different ways that the body's responding to it and stuff, we can confidently say after 5 years, after 10 years, chances are this is what's going to happen. And that's why we want to look at short-term effects and medium-term effects, and then look at those as well. Because we don't want to just say, okay, there's this stressor in the body that's happening after 6 months. Hey, we're just going to sweep that under the rug and ignore that. It's probably going to go away on its own. The body is really good about making sure we listen to it if it feels like something's out of place. So things get amplified over time. And so short-term effects become long-term effects. And if there's relatively small or negligible short-term effects, we can reliably say there's probably the same thing with long-term effects as well. Let's see other things. Ooh, Woodbrock Pete, beer greetings from Germany. Salute, my friend. I'm not drinking beer, but I was last night. I had a rice beer the other day. That was really good. I love the beer in Germany. I've been there a couple of times. Leonberg in particular, really good beer. It's funny how people like will go to Europe and they'll be like, I've been eating bread all day long and I feel great. I felt the same way about the beer in Germany, where it's like, man, I drink beer a couple times in a week and I feel blah. But I go to Germany, I drank beer like every night last time I was there, and I was like, man, I feel amazing. I'm like never hungover. It's fantastic. Mike Hunt saying sub to his channel for Isometrics information. Yes, very good. I'm making great gains using it. 6 months Isometrics only. Fantastic, Mike. Congratulations. Good for you. Good for you. I get questions a lot from people asking me about what if I did Isometrics only kind of stuff. It's like, yeah, sure, go for it. Again, what are the short-term effects versus the long-term effects? This is one of the reasons why I often advocate for folks saying we need instant gratification. We need short-term gratification. It's like, how do I know if an exercise is working? How do I know if a diet's going to pan out? It's like we should have relatively positive short-term feedback. That was the case with me in isometrics for sure, because I got much stronger feedback in the use of my muscles and the stimulus that I was creating them within 2 days than I had been trying with several other things in 2 years prior to that. So in 2 days, I was like, holy smokes, this is really helping me a lot. So it's a pretty good bet it's going to help me over the next 2 to 3 years. And if you're ever doing a workout or an exercise and you're like, I don't know if this is really going to work out. Yeah, then people are like, well, it all adds up, it'll work out. It's stuff. Screw that. Like, I don't want to invest a lot of time and energy and money and effort in diet and exercise habits. Cross my fingers and I'm like, I hope it pans out in 6 years. No, I want results now. I want some sort of a tangible benefit today. Because if I can get a good tangible benefit, I'm like, oh, my muscles feel better. Oh, my knees feel better doing this. Oh, I feel really good. Oh, my energy level is higher. Oh, my cravings are going down. Whatever. If I'm getting short-term benefits, I'm going to get big long-term benefits. And so that's why we want to base long-term projections on short-term occurrences. And if you're doing something like isometrics and you're like, dude, 6 months, it's been great, chances are, yeah, it's going to be great for you 10 years from now, too. So go with the short term to learn the long term sort of thing. Isometrics are a great aspect of that. Ben finally saying, really long forearms. I have a really hard time feeling my biceps when doing curls. Yes. The only way I can voluntarily contract my biceps when I have an arm extended, like for planche. And the planche, it's not so much extended, but your shoulder is more extended too, because your bicep, of course, crosses over shoulder muscle, one of the heads. So that's why you're feeling it in the planche. So that's actually really good there, Ben, because that's usually when people have more trouble engaging a muscle, is in an elongated position. That's why bicep, and people are like, yeah, all right, I'm making my muscle. Bicep is flexed. I can feel the bicep. And as soon as the arm goes straight, it goes, bleh, and then it turns right off. You seem to have the opposite scenario where you can engage the muscle very hard because you've probably been practicing planche. Remember, tension control is a skill, my friends. And so because of your planche work, you're engaging your muscles in elongated positions. So that's where you're used to tension control. And that's habitually where you keep your muscles tight. So now you want to practice something where your arm is bent. I recommend doing some sort of a curl and holding the curl position as hard as you can in your biceps. I also highly recommend tensing the rest of the muscles in your pull chain. Make sure your back is engaged. A lot of times, challenge with developing the biceps means lack of back and core stability. So make sure your shoulders are back and you are holding the top position, getting a bit of a squeeze there, and that very well may help you with that sort of idea. So he's following up saying, what do you suggest to feel better in my biceps when doing curls? Yeah, so pausing at the top, it's a practice. So tension control is a skill, my friends. It is something you have to practice doing. And because it's running largely on subconscious autopilot, it's something we're not aware of. We're not consciously controlling it. So we need to consciously control it in order to rewire the habitual pathways. And it's just like breathing, it's just like talking. Several years ago, when I started to do a lot more of these podcasts and videos, I started to take like public speaking courses and stuff. And I just simply was watching myself on camera more, editing my videos and podcasts and stuff like that, because everybody thinks they speak fine. I'm like, I don't learn to talk gooder. I can like you know talking for me is it's like you know right so I was doing a lot of that sort of thing and I'm still catching myself with it. So we need to be aware of what we're doing and consciously working to change what we do. That can be quite humbling. It can be very hard. And for a while, it can even feel like it's not even doing anything. Tension control is one of those things that you can work on it for weeks on end and feel like it's doing nothing at all, which is why a lot of people will try it for a bit and give up on it and be like, ah, my muscle connections all BS and all that kind of thing, because it's a exponential learning curve. Feels like it's doing nothing. Feels like it's hardly doing anything. Still feels like it's doing nothing. And maybe it feels like it's kind of doing a tiny bit of something, then a little bit more, and then okay, maybe there, hit or miss. Okay, and then you hit a tipping point at some point, and then the muscles are like, whoa, holy mother, wow, that is really different. And depending on the level of control you have, it can take months to get there, or it could maybe take a week or two. That's one of the reasons why I fell in love with isometrics, because I found that practicing tension control with isometrics was a hell of a lot more effective and more and faster than anything else I had been doing up to that point. So if you're ever struggling with tension control, practicing the isometric contraction of the muscles against something like a yoga strap, isometric chain, even just coming up underneath a sturdy countertop and pulling upwards like a curling motion can do wonders for you. I know I'm still getting here a little off track, but I love talking to you folks. It's always so much fun. Smooth operator coming back saying, Matt, have you done cupping, and how long after treatment does the results work? So I had a really weird instance once where I was in, funny enough, long story, but I was in the circus once. Funny enough, I was, one of these people who got picked out of the crowd to come and do something funky with the clowns and everything. And part of the act that I had to do was looking up for like minutes on end, and I started to get a crick in my neck. And then, I was like, oh man, my neck's kind of sore after and everything. And then I like was on the flight, flying home the next day, and I was sleeping like this. And for like 2 weeks, I had like, oh, my neck doesn't feel quite right kind of thing. And then I was trying to massage it, and I must have hit a nerve or something. And suddenly, like, my neck went nuts to the point where I could barely move. And if you ever want to really understand how important the muscles along your vertebrae are, it's like, get that to happen. So I went to a sports rehab place, and they literally were like, okay, Matt, we can come see you. I was in the waiting room, and it took me like 20 seconds to stand up out of the chair. And they were like, whoa, you are in rough shape. I'm like, yeah, I can barely move. My neck is all jacked up. And that was one of the things they did. They did a lot of stuff. They did scraping, they did cupping, they did massage, they did a ton of stuff on my neck. And after probably about 48 hours, my neck was like 90% better, and then it got better from there. So the results were permanent because I was fixing damage that was there. And that's generally what we want to look at is if you're getting cupping for something, the cupping is helping with a misalignment that's somehow happening in your body. But what that's doing is it's giving you the chance to heal. Right? The cupping did not fix me. It just brought me in alignment so that the nerves or the muscles and everything that were going nuts could finally regain their alignment, and then I could heal. The cupping itself doesn't heal you. So what you want to do is ask, like, what is out of alignment? And if you have to keep going for repeat sessions, you want to ask, it's like, okay, what is going on with the cupping? Like, what are you activating something? Are you disactivating? Well, what's going on? And how do you make that permanent? So you don't need the cupping anymore. It should fix things. Remember, we're not supposed to be constantly needing to put our bodies into a service station in order to fix something. I've got the idea. I've had injuries and aches and pains throughout my whole body all along, and I learned really early on. It's like, okay, we're doing something for my shoulder or my hip or my back or whatever. It's like, what are you doing, and how do I make that permanent? Because I can't just keep going to the chiropractor for the rest of my life. I need to know, what are you fixing, and how do I keep it fixed? And that's what you really want to look at as far as what the cupping is doing, or scraping or massage or whatever. Let's see. So, as I alluded to earlier, the idea of these drugs sounds exciting. However, you don't need to wait for the drug. You don't need to wait for a myostatin blocker in order to start making some significant progress. And that's because fundamentally what these drugs do is they're not necessarily telling you to build muscle, they're limiting or decreasing the things that are holding you back. And by and large, whenever I've made progress, or clients of mine have made progress over the past several decades, by and a large part of it, it's not because they actually work harder. It's not because they find some new diet or exercise hack or some new trick or some like, oh, I found this exercise on the internet and now my arms are getting much bigger. Very, very rarely does that ever happen. Most of the time, when someone makes good progress, it's because they get rid of a limitation, something that's holding them back, something that is preventing them from getting what they want. So many people are already doing everything fine. They're working out fine, their diet is fine, everything is great. It's just there's something there that's holding them back. And so it's like riding a bicycle with the brakes on. You can try and push harder. You can put more time in the saddle. You can try and really dig deep for it, and you will get slightly better results, but you're also going to exhaust yourself a lot faster that way. However, when you take the proverbial brakes off, you get much further, much faster, much easier with the same habits you already have to a large degree. So, what I wanted to finish off with today's episode is what are the things that are potentially holding you back and go after the rate limiting step? Because even if these muscle building drugs really come out, and even if they're the greatest thing since sliced bread and they do everything they say, there's still a very high likelihood they're not going to do anything for a large number of people. And that's because they're addressing a limitation. And that limitation is only valid and holding them back if it's there. And that's what we want to look at. What is the rate limiting step that's holding you back? So if we're looking at myostatin, for example, and someone's a hard gainer and they're like, I can't build muscle to save my life, and myostatin's a real big limitation to you, yeah, these drugs would potentially could work wonders if they could actually work for that. Again, I'm still skeptical a bit. However, if you're coming to the plate and you're like, yeah, I don't really have a whole lot of myostatin limitations in my body, my genetics aren't there, I've got other things, well, then the drug's not really going to do you a heck of a lot of good because you're going after a limitation that doesn't exist. Meanwhile, other limitations are holding you back. So, what I wanted to do today is address some of the biggest limitations that I've experienced, that clients of mine have experienced, that have significantly held them back. And when you get rid of those limitations or really dumb them down, then suddenly you're off to the races and you're like, wow, is that making a difference? Holy smokes. And you can get those type of results right away. So here's your responsibility though. A lot of times, the thing that is holding you back is the thing that you're kind of discrediting or not putting a lot of attention towards. One of the bigger mistakes that we all make at some point in our fitness career, especially when we're starting out for the first 3 to 5 years, is we get hyper focused on a narrow range of influences. Usually because we focus on that thing initially and it makes a pretty good difference. And then we think, great, that's the answer. That's everything there is to the picture. I'm going to focus on that one thing, whether it's doing as many push ups as you possibly can, getting a crap ton of protein in your diet, dialing in your workout program so that it's got the most scientifically cutting edge research behind it, whatever the case may be. It happens when we find one thing that we try, it makes a notable difference, and we think that's it, that's the answer. High volume workouts, high intensity, putting more weight on the bar. That's always the answer from here on out. Nothing else matters. But the fact of the matter is that big general goals in fitness, like losing body fat and building muscle and strength and performance, depend on many variables, many influences. And when we hyper focus on one or two influences, like how much protein you're getting or how many push ups you can do, you're basically trying to make massive things happen from small habits, relatively small habits. And yeah, that can matter and it can make a difference, but it's only going to carry so much weight on the fundamental process that's actually responsible for your results. And then you get stuck in the basically the rat race of trying to maximize an influence. And you're just gulping down protein shakes like crazy. You're doing hundreds of push-ups every single day. You're doing tons of cardio in an effort to control body fat, whatever that is. Every time you try to maximize and expand the influence of a single habit or behavior, you're talking about exponentially increasing levels of stress and work and wear and tear on body, mind, and lifestyle, because you're like, that's the one thing I've got to maximize the hell out of this. And you've already checked off that box. You've maximized as much benefit as you can get out of that influence. Continuing to keep going with that probably isn't going to make any difference. If anything, it's probably going to hold you back, because now you're putting so much of your resources towards that single influence that you're stealing it away from the other things that do matter. So your homework is to pay attention to what I'm going to be talking about in the rest of this episode, and what of these influences are the ones that you're not paying attention to. Which are the ones that you kind of sweep under the rug, like, yeah, that's not really that important. Yeah, that doesn't really, that's no big deal, kind of. I'm going to ignore that. I got that covered. I'm fine. Chances are that's the thing that's holding you back. And it doesn't matter how much you're focusing on maximizing whatever you are focusing on now, because you probably have done that thing to death, and it's probably not going to help you more by trying to amplify that thing to a higher degree. So, how are we going to do this? Well, we've got, when it comes to the process of building muscle, we've got, of course, our fundamental process that I talk about in Be Fit, Live Free. We have a stimulus and we have adaptation. We subject our body to a stimulus, our muscles to a stimulus, and then our muscles adapt for the sake of accommodating the demand that stimulus comes from. So, what are the big influences on each half of this? Well, when it comes to creating that stimulus, as I already addressed, is tension control. You can only work a muscle to the degree you can engage it. If you have trouble engaging a muscle, good luck ever creating an effective stimulus for making that muscle bigger and stronger. It's just, there's just no juice to the muscle. There's no electricity, literally, going to the muscle. So you're always going to struggle with it. And the whole stimulus that we're creating through particularly building muscle through challenging our work capacity is we've got to put a good amount of tension in the muscle, good amount of muscular engagement, and we have to hold that engagement for a long enough time to challenge its work capacity. How long can it produce that level of tension? In simple, more practical terms, this is basically pushing close to failure in your workouts. Right? You're just doing the curls until your biceps are burning like the fire of 1,000 suns, and you're just like, I can't get any more reps. That's challenging your work capacity. But it's really hard to do that if your tension control is pretty poor, because you're going to use other muscles. You're going to use compensation in other ways in order to get the exercise done. But the muscle's really not doing a whole heck of a lot. So it's really hard to challenge the work capacity if tension control is poor. How do you know if tension control is poor? Well, you just don't feel the muscle all that much. When you are working your muscles, you should be getting a lot of sensory feedback, a lot of it. You should be really feeling the muscle working very hard. And if you're like, sure, I guess I feel these muscles working, like, no. It should be like getting hit in the baseball bat with hitting the shins with a baseball bat. Very little doubt that it's happened. It's like, whoa, yeah, that's definitely there. That's what you're looking for. So tension control is huge. As I mentioned before, isometrics are a good way to work on tension control, but also just in the habit of, quote, setting the tension before every set you ever do, which is nothing more than contracting the muscles you're trying to work. So if you're about to do bicep curls, for example, you got the bar in your hands, or you're on your suspension straps, or even doing body weight rows, tense the muscles. It doesn't need to be a ton of tension. It just need to be some tension. Should be able to voluntarily contract the muscle before applying resistance. And if you're like, well, how do I know if I'm doing that? I'm not really sure I'm doing that. That's definitely a sign you need work on that, because it should be very obvious and extremely self-evident. So if you're like, well, I'm not really feeling it. Okay, good. That means you need to work on it. And it's always good to be in the habit of setting the tension before every set you ever do. Partially for improving tension control. Second, to ensure you have tension in the muscles that you are trying to work, because it's different for every set. If you're always passive about your muscle tension and activation, it's going to be hit or miss. It's much more consistent if you just take a second and be like, okay, biceps back, lats on. Okay, good. That's all it takes. You do that every set, that adds up quick, and that's going to really improve tension control. Ensure you have it. And it also makes the exercise a heck of a lot safer, because when you don't have the supportive tension in your muscles, a lot of times that force goes right into your joints. So we had someone here asking about pinchy pain here. Pinchy pain, the left elbow just below the tricep. I'm doing weighted dips. Yeah, this is a bad form issue or something else. So yeah, you're not using tension somewhere. Now, that's assuming that your joints and everything are healthy. If you've got an injury somewhere, then you can have everything perfectly fine and you're still going to hurt it. I have a client I just work with who sprained her ankle recently, and she's like, it hurts when I walk. I'm like, yeah. She's like, what am I doing wrong? You're walking on an injury. So there is a chance that you did one set of dips at one point, or maybe not even dips. You could have just, caught a door wrong, hit your funny bone funny or something. And then when you went to do dips, you're like, ow, that hurts. It's like, yeah, you've got damage in there. You need to let it heal. You need to let it rust up, doing things that don't damage or don't feel pain, which causes damage. Or a reflection of the damage is mandatory. So you may need to lay off the dips for a while, but you need it to heal on up. But yeah, how well are you feeling your triceps work? Is your back engaged? Is your chest engaged? Dips are one of those exercises that just hits everything in the upper body. So whenever I start dips, I always set my tension throughout all of my upper body, my forearms, biceps, triceps, shoulders, back, chest, abs, everything on. Turn it on first. Don't make your tension control passive, because then you're leaving it to chance on whether or not it's actually working to the degree you want. So you're making the exercise much less effective and more risky on those elbows. So set the tension first, see if that helps. If it's just nagging you, then go with, maybe a push-up or something like that, because you want to avoid pain when you're doing these things. Always let your pain go with what you have, that sort of thing. So tension control is number one. Got to have that. You don't have that, nothing else matters. Number two is, are you using exercises that are making it as easy as possible to challenge your muscular work capacity? So this is basic bodybuilding kind of stuff. There's a reason why the basics always win when it comes to building up the body. You turn to a bodybuilding magazine, you're not going to have fancy schmancy skill-based kind of exercises that look like something you'd see in the circus. It's very simple stuff: bench press, dips, pull-ups, bicep curls, leg extensions, lunges, calf raises. The simpler and more basic the technique is, the easier it typically is to challenge your work capacity. Because the more you have other elements being challenged, like cardio or stability or coordination, the more those are the limiting factor as opposed to the work capacity of the muscles. So you want to use whatever exercises you feel are best for you to get good activation in the muscle, turning the muscle on, good amount of resistance so you can get a good amount of tension in the muscle, and it's safe, comfortable, and basically stable enough that you can really push yourself to a high degree of muscular fatigue or capacity. If you're using an exercise where you're like, oh, I can hardly hold on, oh, it's so unstable, or oh, I have trouble really dialing in the technique, it's so much harder to effectively challenge your work capacity. And so it's therefore going to just be harder to build muscle. It's holding you back. So that's why very simple, basic exercises that require a lot of work from the muscle, but are relatively easy in other aspects, are going to be generally the better exercise for making it easier to build muscle. And if you're like, I'm trying to build muscle, and you've got like a ton of skill exercises and you're doing burpees and you're doing, wobbly pistol squats, I'm like, yeah, good luck, man. Your programming with your exercises is just all over the place. It's really hard to challenge your muscular work capacity. Therefore, it's just going to hold you back, pure and simple. And on top of that, the third influence we want to look at is your programming about challenging your muscular work capacity. Because if you've got a workout program And it's like, okay, this is all about functional fitness and it's all about, all these different aspects of fitness and things. That's great. I used to work at a gym that was all about training like an athlete, and we had all these functional things that we were doing and stuff. But I knew a lot of guys there, like, I just want to look good naked. I just want to get jacked. I'm like, dude, this is totally not the way to do that. Because you're working your tail off, but you've got like one exercise you've done this entire week that really might challenge your work capacity. And that's why you want to make sure resting enough in between sets so that you can attack each set with a good amount of effort, that you're not pushing other exercises or programming in it so that you're challenging other aspects of fitness alongside your muscle growth. I do my cardio. I train for sport. I train for performance and stuff, but I sure as hell don't do that during my strength training. When I'm in the gym or if I'm, on my pull-up bar over here and I'm on muscle building mode, I don't give a damn about functional strength. I don't care at all about stability and all these other sorts of things. I don't care about cardio. I don't care about all that stuff. I'm just like, muscle, I'm going to make you my little slave right now. I'm going to put a good amount of tension in you and I'm just going to drive you into the ground. That's what I'm focusing on with that sort of thing. And if I've got run around the building 5 times and do 20 burpees, stand on one leg on a Bosu ball, juggling flaming kettlebells while I'm doing that, that's just going to stand in the way. It's just going to hold me back. If I want to do that stuff, I do it in a different workout. But I'm not going to do it while I'm trying to create a stimulus for hypertrophy. So those are the biggest things that I find hold people back when it comes to creating that stimulus. Well, actually, one of the biggest things is people don't even know what stimulus they're trying to create. They don't even know what they're going after. They're just assuming that if they work their tail off in the workout, that's going to be good enough. It's like, no, there's 100 different ways you can work yourself to death. 5 of them are effective for building muscle. 95% of it are just going to be running around in circles with your head cut off. It's not going to be a productive use of work. And remember, when you don't know what stimulus you're trying to create or what objective you're going after in your training, hard work and effort itself becomes the objective. And that's a very dangerous place to be, my friends. I was there for many years myself. Very much regret it. Very much regret. If I could go back and tell myself, and well, first I'd go back, slap myself upside the back of my head and say, invest everything you've got in Bitcoin when it's 10 cents a coin. Then I would tell myself, okay, here's how you actually want to be training, not just because it's really hard. And that's what we want to be going after, is the objective. H. Reed, it's good to see you. Hope you're doing well. No question, just want to say hi. It's good to see you. Thank you very much for stopping by. So Hypno's got a good point. They won't be available because of the cost. Tests and trend, most steroids are insanely easy to get raw materials. The farms won't be easily recreated. So here's always the opportunity with businesses, though, is we're seeing this with the weight loss drugs, is that if it's expensive at first, there's always the opportunity to undercut. There's always the opportunity to make it cheaper and make it more available. And that will take time with these muscle building drugs. It will take time for things to get cheaper, but it always does. It always will, unless it's owned by a monopoly or something like that. But as long as materials and intellectual property is widely available, it'll come down. It'll come down and be one of those things that you can bank on. It's just a question of timing. And that's why I'm talking about this stuff now. It's like we can get a lot of advancement now in our progress. It's just a matter of looking at whatever's holding you back. And these drugs are supposedly often looking at what may be holding you back. But, again, what are the consequences? A lot of times, whenever we get an advancement in one area, we've got other things that are holding us back. And that's kind of the whack-a-mole effect that we often find. That's why my next book, Beautiful Strength, addresses that when it comes to, like, if we want to use fitness to look better and be more attractive, people are like, okay, yeah, I'm going to like really dial in my diet and I'm going to work out like a machine. I'm going to really, really get the best body I can. It's like, yeah, but that type of behavior elicits more challenges to your level of attractiveness. Very few people want to be hanging around gym rats who want to eat clean all the time. I know this from experience. I've literally had been dating women back in the day, and my fitness habits were the ultimate cock block. Like, yeah, okay, you look good, but I don't want to hang out with you. You have no personality outside the gym, kind of thing. So this is why we've got to be always aware of, what am I compromising with these things? With every step forward we take, we always have to look at, what am I losing? And there's always a cost. There's always something down. And does that cost compromise your goals in kind of a backhanded way? All right, let's see. Now, things that are holding you back in adaptation. So we got the stimulus we're creating, attention control, productive exercises for challenging work capacity, productive programming for challenging work capacity. Now you can have everything perfect in your workout. You can have everything great about your exercises and your programming and attention controls on, still nothing. Because you don't get results from your training. You get results from your adaptation to the training. And adaptation is kind of a double-edged sword, because on one hand, it's completely on autopilot. You don't need to do anything to make it happen. Your body's going to adapt automatically, but it can be inhibited in several ways. Now, the big mistake a lot of people make is they think adaptation is recovery and vice versa. And it's not. You don't get results when you recover. That's something that you hear often, and I used to say it myself. You get results when you recover. No, you don't. You get results when you adapt. Recovery always happens. Adaptation does not. Adaptation very often does not happen, especially if you need a lot of recovery. So the way to think about it is, recovery is about repairing and fixing your body from stress, fatigue, and damage. Adaptation is about building your body up above and beyond where you were now. Now, both of those require substantial resources on your body. It takes time, it takes hormones, it takes protein, it takes all sorts of physiological energy and processes that your body's going through. The more of those resources you have to spend on recovery, the less you have for adaptation. I always think of the analogy of, like, imagine trying to, soup up your car. You're like, I want my car to be amazing. I want it to look great, and I want it to go faster. But on the way to the tuning shop, you get in an accident. And you're like, oh man, I got this fender bender. And they're like, yeah, well, you had $5,000 to put into your car. It's going to take $4,500 to fix your car. So you got $500 to actually make it faster. And you're like, oh, I guess I'll put some faux carbon fiber stickers on the bumper or something like that. Right? I don't have anything left over for making it actually better. So that's why we want to be kind of wary about driving ourselves into the ground and, just needing a whole lot of recovery. Because the more we need to recover, the less we can actually adapt. So funny enough, like, a lot of times people will be like, yeah, I just thrashed, bashed, smashed, and trashed my body within an inch of its life. And now I've got a lot of recovery I'm doing. And that's all good, right? I'm like, yeah, but you just destroyed your body, and you didn't necessarily create that much of a stimulus you were after, because you don't know what you're doing. And two, now you got all this recovery to do. So what are you going to use to actually build yourself up? That's why double trap training in my upcoming program is all about, how do we create a good stimulus with as little work as possible, with as little stress on the body as possible. So that way, recovery requirements are minimal. That's another thing about isometrics. That's why a lot of people find that they build muscle a lot easier on isometrics than with dynamic training, is because you can create a very powerful stimulus with isometrics, but the recovery requirements isometrics are relatively small because there's so much less damage to the muscle. So you create a very strong stimulus, and suddenly your muscles are like, great, we've got all these resources available to adapt and build ourselves bigger. How do you not build muscle with that sort of thing? So the bottom line is, yes, you need to recover. Yes, there's going to be uh, a lot of stress and stuff. I mean, there's no getting around that, of course. Challenging your work capacity is taxing on body, mind, sometimes lifestyle. But doing that as the goal itself and just driving yourself on the ground should not happen. When it comes to creating a stimulus for muscle growth, we want to challenge our work capacity, not deplete it. which means doing the exercise or a group of exercises for a tension chain to the point where you're starting to really like nosedive in your ability to do it. So let's say you've got pull-ups on deck. Okay, so you do pull-ups and you give it everything you got, and you get 10 reps. And then the next one, you get like 9 reps. The next one, you got 6 reps. You're done. Oh, I could do more. I could do more reps. I could do more sets. Yeah, I know you can do more. So what? Doesn't matter if you can do more. You're done. You've challenged your work capacity is starting to really decline. You're done. You're finished. I don't want you to keep going because that's going to drive up the need for more recovery. And the stimulus for building muscle is largely just already done. You're finished. Don't spend twice the price for the same good. Go into a store and being like, oh, wow, that gadget's 20 bucks. Okay. How about if I give you 80 bucks? How about that? And the shop clerk's going, what are you, stupid? Well, that's exactly what we do in our workouts when we just keep driving ourselves into the ground all the time with endless volume and endless exercises and endless workloads. We don't know what we're doing. So we're like, I'm just going to spend every dollar I've got in this store and hopefully I walk out with the thing I came in here for. No, go in, you get what you want, and you leave. And that's it. And that's what we're doing with double tap training with an objective-based approach. You go in, you do enough work to achieve the stimulus you're after, and you're done. You leave and you go home, have a good dinner, get some sleep. So first and foremost, not working yourself to death. It's a huge one. Huge. That can make a big difference. Big difference. Second off is rest. Rest and recovery. Now, this goes for both intra-workout rest, so rest between sets, and rest between workouts, that sort of thing. And this is largely dependent on a number of variables. So that's why I always say rest as needed. Rest as needed between sets because you want to put a good amount of effort into every set or every exercise you do. And rest is needed between workouts. So if you're coming up on Wednesday and you're like, yeah, Wednesday time to hit the legs, and your legs are kind of like, we're not really feeling our best today, give yourself another day. Give yourself another day, because the goal is not just to recover, but to bring as much as you can into your workouts, into your next set. So if you can rest a bit more and bring more, then do that. Do that, because trying to create an effective stimulus when you're tired and you're exhausted and you're burned out and you're sore and you're achy and you're not motivated, good luck. It's going to be twice the effort for half the stimulus, if that. You're always creating a stimulus no matter what, but you're working twice as hard for half the benefit. No, rest a bit more. If you feel that's from like, if I rest a little more, then I'm going to be able to bring more to the next set, more to the next exercise, or more to the next workout. And therefore, I'm going to be able to create a stronger stimulus with the same amount of effort or even less effort. That's always going to be a much more amplified effect. And then finally, third is about food. And no, it's not just about eating a crap ton of food and choking down protein shakes, but let me get to the questions here before I jump into that, because I want to address that. Super Chiquita, it's good to see you again, my friend. Saying, remember that some time ago there was a lot of talk about muscle confusion. Yeah, I kind of fell for that one too, because I got, again, I had great results by changing things up. And I was like, oh, muscle confusion. Nothing is more convincing than a myth that actually works for you. But it doesn't work the way you think it does or why you think it does. I understand this approach is now outdated, but I still remember getting results from that. Why could that be? Absolutely, yes. So here's why that worked. This happened to me when I first started getting into working out. I worked at a fitness equipment shop, and that's how I got my start in the fitness industry almost 30 years ago. And so I was obsessed with equipment, and I spent like all the money I had in my employee discount to cram a ton of equipment into my small little apartment. And so I had barbells and machines and an exercise bike and dumbbells. And it's like, what? I never had money in my account. Every time I had any degree of money in my account, I was like, what can I buy next? Right? Every cable attachment you could imagine and everything. And I had a very strict routine. I was always using the same exercises, the same equipment. And then I learned about this magical, wonderful place called a gym. And instead of having to spend all of my money on equipment and cramming it into my small apartment where I didn't even literally have room for my bed, seriously, I just slept under the squat rack, I could just pay a monthly fee, go to this magical, wonderful place, and have all the toys I ever wanted. And boy, I'm not saying this sarcastically. I literally felt like I died and went to heaven like a kid at Christmas. Like, oh, this place is amazing. Because I grew up in upstate Vermont. We didn't have gyms when I was growing up. It just didn't have them. And there was a new gym that opened up down the street from where I lived. And I was like, this place is incredible. And so I was using everything there was. Here's the answer to your question, though, Super Chiquita. So when you use different things and you quote, keep your muscles guessing, what you're doing is you're subjecting your muscles to a broader training stimulus and you're getting something a little bit different or new from each one. So let me give you an example here, right? So the big mistake that I made was that I still followed the same program no matter what I did. So it didn't matter if I was on a barbell bench press, dumbbell bench press, machine bench press, incline, decline, cable bench press. They had every kind of chest press option I could imagine. But I kept doing the same program on every single one, which was 3 sets of 10. Very basic back in the day, right? So it didn't matter what I was using. Like in my mind, I'm thinking, this is a cable machine. That's a incline press. That's a hammer strength. That's free weights. In my mind, I'm thinking it's different, but my muscles are like, yeah, 3 sets of 10. We know. We keep doing the same damn thing. Why are we doing this here? Kind of thing. It's kind of like years ago, I used to train a kid who every time I saw him, he's like, I totally changed my diet around. I'm like, whoa, holy smokes, what did you change? And he's like, instead of eating potato chips, regular potato chips at lunch every day, I'm eating the low sodium potato chips. Yeah. And every time it was something like that. It's like, instead of regular ice cream, I'm going with the low fat ice cream. And it's like, dude, it's still ice cream, dude. Like, I know it seems like you're making a difference, but you're really not. It's a small little influence. Like, I'd rather you not eat the ice cream and go have an apple instead. That would be different, right? So when we change things up in our workout routine, it's not about changing what we think we're changing. What we're changing is the fundamental stimulus you're creating. I wasn't doing that. So even though I was doing a whole bunch of different things, I really wasn't changing a whole lot other than maybe a couple of different angles or resistance vectors. But this happens a lot with calisthenics too, when people go from weights to calisthenics or vice versa. If you're changing your fundamental programming, that's going to be different. So this happens a lot when people are like in the gym and they're getting sick of the weights and they're, man, my joints hurt and everything. So they're like on the bench press for 20 years and they're like, I'm going to try this calisthenics thing. And the results are very different, good or bad. And they're like, why? And it's, well, I did calisthenics. No, it's not. It's because in the gym, you were doing 5x5 on the barbell, right? Heavyweight, 5x5, 5 sets for 5 reps. Then when you got into calisthenics, you're like, I'm going to do 100 push-ups for a single set. That's completely different programming. And so what you're doing is you're subjecting your body to a very different stimulus. And by and large, whenever we subject our body to a different stimulus, we feel change. Whether or not that change is actually good is a different story. Because oftentimes we could be getting weaker. It happened a lot when functional training came to be the big thing in the early aughts, the late 90s and the early 2000s. People started doing functional training, things on Bosu balls and things like that. And inadvertently, they were changing their programming. And they felt like, oh, my body's changing. I feel differences and stuff. Like, no, it's not because you're doing it on a Bosu ball. It's not because you're doing things on stretch bands and all this sort of thing. It's because you're changing the programming. You're changing the fundamental stimulus. And that's why you're getting a different result. And a lot of times it wasn't a better result. It was just different. And a lot of times we don't know the difference because we just see change and assume change is good kind of thing. Because it's like, oh, I'm getting stronger on this exercise. Yeah, you're getting stronger on the exercise. The question is, are you getting stronger as a whole? And that, I know it's a roundabout way, but there's a lot of lessons, a lot to unpack with the story here, Super Chiquita, is that when you change something, you often change the programming. The question, though, is that programming in alignment with your actual goals? Is it something that is going to help you get what you want, or is it different for the sake of being different? If you can be lost in a city and always be looking at different scenery doesn't mean you're actually getting closer to what you want. But if all you care about is, oh, that's new, oh, that's different, oh, that's cool, oh, that's unique, then you're just wandering around aimlessly, assuming you're going to get to where you want. But the novelty is fooling you into thinking that you're actually getting somewhere. So it's kind of a false flag, a false sort of approach. Oh, here's a really good one from Sinitar. Sinitar Thrax saying, if you take drugs to achieve a goal you can achieve naturally, wouldn't you create a mindset where the goal of a workout is to maximize the drug use instead of the original goals you had in mind? Man, that's such a good question. So this is one of the many reasons why I've never had any temptation for drug use myself, particularly for steroid use, drugs in general too. Largely because my thing is I don't want to become dependent on stuff. That's the whole point of Red Delta Project, is be fit, live free. You know, it's like, okay, I'm getting great results, but I depend on the diet, I depend on the equipment, I depend on this gym, I depend on my high maintenance workout program, I depend on something, I depend on all this stuff. I'm not actually free. The more you have to depend on external variables, the less freedom you actually have. And so when I was looking at, like, you know, because every guy is like, well, what about steroids? I was like, I don't want to have to depend on steroids. I don't care if they're free. I don't care if they're safe. I just don't want to have to depend on it. But you know, way back in the early days of the internet and stuff, you know, message boards and stuff, you know, I would stumble on fitness threads, diet threads and stuff, and I stumbled on several like steroid using threads and stuff. And after being there for like even an hour, I was like, oh my gosh, this is really complicated. This is real. I always figured, you know, up to that point, steroids was, well, you stick a needle in your ass, you pop a couple pills, you get jacked. No, that's not how it works. It was so much debate and so much nuance and so much science and everything to it. I was like, this is a whole nother rabbit hole on top of diet and exercise that you got to figure out. So it's like figuring out how to effectively work out is tough enough as it is. On top of that, you got to figure out how to eat well too. There's a lot of debate and there's a lot of nuance and there's a lot of science and there's a lot of all that. Like, man, you got to figure those two things out. Good luck. And now you got a third thing on that whole thing is figuring out the whole drugs and pharmacological intervention. Count me out, man. No, I don't want to put in that kind of work. For what? Like, I'm not a bodybuilder. I'm not an athlete. I can totally understand if I was a top level athlete. I'm like, dude, if I get on the right drug program, I can make 20 million a year. Oh yeah, I could definitely see that happening. Or a friend of mine back in Vermont, he literally had the line drawn in the sand in front of him, where his coaches, he wanted to be an Olympic athlete in track and field. And they were like, all right, you're as good as you're going to get naturally. The only way you're going to be able to reach the Olympics is on drugs. So he had that choice. He's like, I have literally dedicated my life to this dream of going to the Olympics. And now I have to make this choice. Drugs, I have a good chance. Clean, no chance. And he chose to give up on the dream. He's like, I just don't want to hassle with the drugs. And so that's exactly the point. I'm thinking you're met here, Sinitar, is like, it's just another layer of complexity and dependence and cost. And you got to weigh the pros and the cons. You got to weigh what are the costs to it. And I know for me personally, it sure as hell ain't going to be worth it. Now, it's a little different now. You know, I've got a YouTube channel, I've got a fitness business. If I get on drugs and I get jacked, will I attract more YouTube subscribers? Will I make more money? Absolutely. Is it going to be enough? Probably not. Probably not. But again, Red Delta Project wasn't founded on that principle. Red Delta Project is not about getting the best results you can. It's about being in great shape with as little dependence, aka as much freedom as possible. Because most of the time when people go after muscle and fat loss and stuff, they inadvertently close themselves into a cage of their own making. I did it for years. And one of the things that we human beings prize and seek more than health and more than gains is freedom. It's personal freedom and independence. And so that's why most people get stuck in the tug of war of I want results, but I also want personal freedom. I want to be lean, but I also want to eat whatever I want and not have to worry about it if I go out to eat with friends. I want to be jacked, but I want to spend my weekends having fun, not all the time figuring out the perfect workout routine. We always have this tug of war back and forth. So I created the Red Delta Project to say, let's end the tug of war. Let's end the struggle within and say, you can get what you want without all of the dependence, without all of the shackles that come with conventional fitness methods to give you power and you autonomy and you personal freedom and independence. And not only does it not compromise the results you want, it amplifies them. And that's what I'm talking about with these things, is that we've got this idea of a muscle building drug coming our way. Is that going to create dependence? Is it going to create more shackles and stuff? Even if it works, like a lot of people are like, it's great, it's awesome, it works. I don't care. I don't care what's effective. I care what's necessary. And what I'm telling you in this episode is that, yes, this stuff may have some potential, but you know what has much bigger potential now? Addressing the things that are holding you back today. And not only will addressing these limitations get you better results, it will also significantly enhance your independence and freedom because you're not dependent on a single variable anymore. You don't have to have the perfect workout program. You don't have to work yourself to death in the gym. You don't have to have a diet that restricts your options and your food choices or becomes an identity. In fact, you're probably better off not with these things, which is the last point that I wanted to make. It's one of the big things that holds a lot of people back is diet. More specifically, dieting. Unless you have a personal reason to follow a diet, I want to save the whales or whatever. No animal products. Okay, great. A medical reason? I can't eat gluten. I'm celiac. I really can't. Okay. That choice is made for you. Religious reasons, or whatever. You could just be like, I just don't like the idea of, drinking dairy products or whatever. Yeah, fine, great, awesome. But if you don't have any of these reasons to follow a particular diet, habit, or trend, don't. You're better off without it. You don't need it. Okay, so there's that dependence thing. You don't have to be on these things. And if we want to have the best chance of adapting and building ourselves up, we want to feed our body. We want to eat to satisfy, which is why we don't have diets here at Red Delta Project. I'm never going to recommend a diet here. Never a particular approach, because the true role of a healthy diet is to satisfy your appetites. You need for hunger and metabolic support, need for nutritional support, and the need for hedonic support, aka emotional eating, right? It's like, I'm craving chocolate. I don't know, I just want chocolate. Like, great. Then you need to tackle that appetite as well. Because when you satisfy your appetites, you significantly increase your chances of adaptation. Otherwise, it's still more stress on body, mind, and lifestyle that you need to recover from. Diets are supposed to relieve stress, not impose it upon your body. And when we eat to satisfy, particularly with your 3 Ps, every meal, good protein source, good plant source, plenty of portion for the sake of satisfying your hunger and metabolic support I just talked about. You do that, that goes a long way at promoting adaptation and recovery as well. But by and large, a lot of times when I personally and other guys, they're like, I just can't build muscle. I just can't. I'm like, what diet are you following? And a lot of times they're like, oh, I'm on this, orvo lacto organic locavore keto intermittent fasting. I'm like, okay, stop right there. It's like, all right, I don't want to tell you how to eat and stuff, but do know that is all holding you back. But it's healthy. No, it's not. I know the rhetoric around this stuff is always, it's for health. No, it's not. It's not healthy. Diets that are based on restriction and deprivation are not the approach for health. Again, totally different if you've got personal circumstances requiring those things, right? But even if that was the case, it's like, okay, I'm celiac, or I can't eat wheat. I grew up, one of my best friends growing up had a very bad allergy to wheat. Couldn't eat anything with wheat in it. And it's like, okay, is his diet healthy because he doesn't eat wheat? No. He's just avoiding a bad thing. He's not necessarily going after good things. That's why eat to satisfy matters, is because our diet should be based on the benefits we get from food, not avoiding the detriments. And the more you eat for beneficial reasons, the more you actually get good things from your diet, which promote that adaptation, rather than just holding you back because your body is starving or in need of more and you're not giving it. So you're just holding it back, a dietary break, so to speak. Let's get to some more questions here to finish off here, folks. Topik, it's good to see you as always. Saying, I came across a post about creatine monohydrate as supplement, but I ever seen my grandfather take one. He, being a farmer, literally had rock hard bones. Tell me your experience on creatine. Yeah, well, he probably was getting his creatine if he was a farmer. It's called steak. We do get creatine from selected food sources. Plus, we don't need creatine. We synthesize it into our muscles. Our body makes it automatically. Basically, when we take creatine, that's why it's a supplement, not a drug, is we're just speeding up the replenishment. That's all we're doing. So creatine is kind of like an energy substrate, if you think of it that way. It's kind of like not NOS, the suspension stuff, NOS, like the Fast and Furious nitrous oxide bottles they've got and everything. That's like what creatine kind of sort of is. Boy, the analogy is really weak, but I think you're getting where I'm talking about here. So when we take that stuff, it helps us to produce energy at a high rate. So if you're not producing a high degree of energy frequently enough, there's really no need for it because you're already synthesizing at a rate that you're already using it. And even if you are benefit of it, you're just replenishing a little faster. I think a lot of people look at it like it's some great, amazing, wonderful thing. And yeah, you do have hyper responders from creatine. Some people, they're just, for whatever reason, like insane with it. I knew this one guy who was asking me, he's a buddy of mine, he's like, I can do a 1-arm pull-up. I was like, wow, that's great. And he's like, but if I supplement with creatine for a few months, I can do 8. Like, squeeze me? How many? He's like, yeah, I can get 8 1-arm pull-ups if I've got like creatine supplementation. I was like, so he's like, do you think I should do it? I'm like, yeah. Like, why are you asking me this? Of course. So you do get guys like that every once in a while, men and women, of course. But it's not a huge big deal for most people because I take it myself. But do I notice anything? No, not really, because honestly, I don't work hard enough or long enough to really probably need it. I just do it as, it's quick, it's simple, it's cheap, it's easy. There's not a whole reason not to do it, but I certainly don't depend on it. But I honestly, my workouts are so short and I don't really do a whole heck of a lot that probably doesn't matter a whole heck of a lot. So it's always, I tell people, experiment with it, see what happens. But yeah, do we need it? No, absolutely not. Are you at the level where it's probably going to make a difference? I would guess no. My buddy doing 1-arm pull-ups, he's at a pretty high level. Probably going to notice a bit more. There's a lot of stuff like that in fitness where things matter, but they're only going to be really noticeable to upper echelon folks. And I'm sure as hell not there. And most of us aren't. So that's why most of this stuff that supposedly does matter probably doesn't. Okay, you great thought to close us out here. It's easy to go down a rabbit hole. Don't let perfect be the enemy of good enough. Absolutely. So many times we get focused on trying to get it right. That's the lesson we often hear in our school systems. You better get it right. Don't get it wrong. Don't program your workout wrong. Don't get your diet wrong. As long as you're getting your basic objectives met, do whatever you want. Do it however you want. Eat whatever you want. Eat whatever foods you want. That's why understanding the objectives that I talk about in all my books are so important, because that's what matters for your results. Be in a caloric deficit if you want to lose body fat. Go after the training stimulus you want for effective workouts. Eat to satisfy for a healthy diet. I don't care what you eat. I don't care how you do that. Do whatever is easiest for you. And that's the way to go about it. And when we think we've got to get it, quote, right and perfect and stuff, good luck figuring out what that means. Because it's always based on some largely subjective rules that come out, and the rules are always changing. So don't try and hit a target with your eyes closed. See your target relative to you and get really good at hitting it. and aim your gun, your bow, your dart, whatever you're shooting, metaphorically speaking, however you feel is best for you. If that means steak every dinner, every night for dinner, go for it. If it means tempeh and tofu, go for it. Whatever. You just need to achieve those fundamental objectives. That's the thing that is in charge. Does one arm pull up increase performance in bicep curls? Probably. You need crazy strong biceps to do those. So I would certainly assume so. But there's always the chance it may not carry over all that much. Remember, if you have an objective about completing a particular exercise, make sure that exercise is part of the objective. If you want to win a bicep curling contest, you better be bicep curling. You hear this a lot in fitness where people are like, oh, I did this type of exercise and training and my performance in this other area skyrocketed. Yeah, there's carryover. There's always the chance of that, but it's risky. There's no such thing as any exercise or program or workout that gives you complete carryover to anything else. You're always going to lose some degree of stimulus somewhere along the lines in the transfer. So if your definition of strength is objectively bench, squat, and bench, squat, and deadlift. You can do calisthenics, you do all the other stuff, but you better be bench, squatting, and deadlift. You don't care about those things and you just want bigger muscles, well, then just do whatever the heck you want to challenge your work capacity. Don't worry about it. So that's where the freedom comes in. That's where understanding the fundamental nature of fitness comes in on Be Fit, Live Free. That's why it took me 15 years to write that book. But it's the marriage of both freedom and fitness, not compromising freedom for fitness. So, okay, folks, I have talked your ear off. Enough audio for this. Of course, as always, is posted on your podcast directory of choice within 24 hours. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming on in. I will be seeing you this Saturday is when I'm planning out my next feed, or I might even do one sooner than that. I like doing these a little bit spur of the moment. It's a little bit more fun for me, but make sure that you check out Red Delta Project's YouTube channel, like, share, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. Remember, this podcast is free for you. It's not free for me. And again, beautiful strength. It's coming, folks. Less than 3 weeks away, July 4th. The book on how to use calisthenics to become more attractive is coming your way. I'm putting on the finishing touches now. So I will keep you up to date on where you can check that out and do pre-sales and stuff like that. So make sure you keep an eye here on the channel. But I will see you in the next episode, folks. Till then, be fit, live free.